There is a doctor in Chicago making $380,000 a year. On paper, she looks rich. She drives a leased BMW. Her children go to private school. She eats out most weeknights. Her mortgage is $4,200 a month. People see her life and assume the game is over. They assume she won. They are wrong. If she needs $5,000 fast, she cannot pull it out without selling something. Borrowing something or pretending the credit card is not debt, that is not wealth. That is a high salary carrying a fragile life. I want you to understand something most people never understand until very late. Income is not the same thing as security. Income is not the same thing as freedom. Income is not even the same thing as being rich. Income is just fuel if you build the wrong machine around it. The machine eats every drop. That is the trap. And it is one of the most dangerous traps in modern America because it wears a luxury costume. It wears a nice watch. It drives a nice car. It lives in the right zip code. It orders the right wine. It takes the right vacations. It looks successful from the sidewalk. Inside the house, it is panic. Inside the house, it is payroll dependency. Inside the house, it is a family with a giant income and no real margin. I have seen this pattern for a very long time. People think the answer to financial stress is more money. Then they get more money. Then they are shocked to discover that the anxiety followed them upstairs. Why? Because the trap does not care how much you make. It only cares how much you keep. That is the whole war. Not what comes in, what stays. Once you understand that, you stop admiring the wrong people. You stop confusing gross income with net worth. You stop assuming the loudest spender is the strongest player. You stop mistaking a polished life for a durable life. The modern economy has created a cruel illusion. If you earn $100,000, you believe $200,000 will calm you down. If you earn $200,000, you believe $400,000 will do it. If you earn $400,000, you tell yourself the next jump will finally create breathing room. It usually does not, because the jump in income is often followed by a jump in housing, a jump in cars, a jump in schools, a jump in vacations, a jump in subscriptions, a jump in reputation maintenance, a jump in what your peer group now calls normal. The person thinks they upgraded their life. What they really did was upgrade the size of the cage. That is my master metaphor for this entire problem. The high-income poverty trap is a golden cage. It is expensive enough to impress strangers and tight enough to suffocate the owner. You do not enter that cage all at once. Nobody wakes up and says, I would like to earn a lot of money and still feel trapped. It happens gradually, one nicer apartment, one better neighborhood, one more expensive school, one more car payment, one country club membership you barely use, one vacation standard you now feel obligated to maintain, one more convenience service because you are tired, one more fixed cost because, after all, you can afford it. That last sentence is where the damage begins. You can afford it. Technically, that word destroys people. Technically, the payment fits. Technically, the bank approves it. Technically, the income covers it. Technically, the lease works. Technically, the monthly number clears. But wealth is not built on what technically clears. Wealth is built on what remains after the clearing is over. That is why a $50,000 janitor who saves relentlessly can end up stronger than a $700,000 surgeon who spends beautifully. That statement annoys high earners because they think money should automatically convert into strength. It does not. Money only becomes strength when it survives contact with your lifestyle. If it all leaks out, you are not rich. You are just well paid. I want to break this trap down for you the way I would if I were sitting across the table from a person making a great income and feeling a very private kind of fear, not fear of poverty in the traditional sense. A different fear, the fear that the machine must keep running, the fear that one missed paycheck becomes one very public unraveling, the fear that your lifestyle has outrun your balance sheet. The fear that your income is high but your foundation is weak. This trap works through a handful of mechanisms. Learn them, and you will stop being fooled by appearances. The first mechanism is what I call the income mirage. The income mirage is simple. It is the false belief that a big paycheck is the same thing as a strong financial position. It is not. Let's person can earn $300,000, $400,000, even $500,000, and still be structurally weak if every dollar already has a destination before it arrives. That is not a rich person. That is a courier. The money passes through their hands and belongs to everyone else. The bank gets some, the school gets some, the car company gets some, the credit card company gets some, the travel industry gets some, the tax authorities get some, the delivery apps get some, the neighborhood standard gets some, the image gets some. What does the owner keep? That is the question nobody asks loudly enough. The data tells you how ugly this is. Large percentages of people making very high incomes still report living paycheck to paycheck. That should stop you cold. If income alone solved the problem, those numbers could not exist. But they do exist because the income mirage convinces people to look at earnings while ignoring retention. A man says, "I make $250,000. I do not care. Tell me what you own. Tell me what you owe. Tell me what you save. Tell me what happens if the paycheck stops for 6 months. Then I will know whether you are rich or just decorated." The second mechanism is the lifestyle ratchet. This one is vicious because it does not feel dangerous when it starts. You get a raise and the old apartment suddenly feels beneath you. You get a bonus and the reliable car suddenly feels boring. You make partner, and now the dinners, schools, neighborhoods, and vacations of your peers start whispering at you, not loudly, quietly. That is why it is effective. The ratchet only turns one way. Upgrading feels natural, downgrading feels like humiliation. That is the key. Luxury becomes normal very quickly, and normal becomes emotionally untouchable. Now, you are no longer deciding from first principles. You are defending a standard that is a terrible place to live from because you begin treating optional costs like permanent obligations. The guest room nobody uses becomes necessary. The second SUV becomes necessary. The premium school becomes necessary. The expensive habits become necessary. And once they feel necessary, they stop being reviewed. This is where smart people get trapped, not because they are stupid, because they are busy, tired, and socially trained to interpret rising spending as evidence of rising success. It is not often, it is just evidence of rising burn rate. The third mechanism is the fixed cost prison. This is the one that does the real damage. A luxury dinner can be skipped, a giant mortgage cannot, a streaming subscription can be canceled. A tuition bill cannot be canceled without emotional fallout. An impulse purchase is annoying. A 7-year car payment is strategic stupidity locked into contract form. When your income rises, your fixed costs often rise with it. Housing gets bigger, cars get newer, insurance gets more expensive, taxes get steeper, child-related costs get more elite, travel gets more premium, maintenance expands around the edges of everything. People tell themselves, this is what successful life looks like. This is what fragility looks like when it has money. I have no problem with people spending on things they genuinely value. That is not the issue. The issue is when fixed costs rise so high that a person with a giant income has the flexibility of a person with none. That is prison. A high-end prison, perhaps, still prison. If your entire structure collapses the moment the income stream wobbles, then your lifestyle is not evidence of wealth. It is evidence of leverage. The fourth mechanism is the comparison engine In earlier generations, people mostly compared themselves to neighbors. That was bad enough. Now they compare themselves to everyone: coworkers, college friends, people online, people with inherited money, people with hidden debt, people renting luxury, people faking luxury, people posting only the highlight reel of a life financed by obligations. Nobody sees this as poison. You can earn a tremendous income and still feel behind because the comparison target keeps moving. That is the trick. The trap does not need you to be poor. It only needs you to feel insufficient. Once you feel insufficient, you spend defensively, you spend to keep up, you spend to stay in frame, you spend to preserve identity, you spend because not spending now feels like a visible downgrade. That is why people with top incomes often experience bottom-tier anxiety. They are not merely funding a life, they are funding a ranking, and rankings are expensive because they never end. The fifth mechanism is cushion collapse. This is the moment the truth is exposed. Everything looks manageable until a real expense shows up: a repair, a medical bill, a break in employment, a tax surprise, a family emergency, a market decline at the wrong time. Then the whole picture becomes visible very quickly. A person making $400,000 who cannot produce $10,000 without stress is not financially strong. He is highly compensated and underbuffered. That distinction matters. Cash reserves are boring, but they are honesty in numeric form. Liquidity tells the truth that lifestyle can hide. You can fake wealth with debt. You cannot fake resilience with debt. When the cushion is missing, everything else in the life becomes louder. Every bill becomes a threat. Every professional risk becomes harder to take. Every business opportunity becomes harder to fund. Every act of independence becomes more dangerous. This is what people do not understand about overspending. It does not just reduce future wealth, it reduces current courage. The sixth mechanism is what I call the compounding split. This is where the trap becomes catastrophic over time. A high earner tells himself, "I make enough. I'll get serious later." Later is expensive. If a person earning $300,000 saves 30%, the future opens for him. If he saves 5%, he has chosen a completely different life. Even if both men spend the next 20 years telling the same story about being successful, this is the great dividing line. Compounding does not care about your title. It does not care about your degrees. It does not care what your neighbors think. It only responds to capital that stays invested long enough to multiply. A person who spends almost everything and invests a token amount is not participating in compounding in any serious way. He is flirting with it. He is watching it from across the room while funding everyone else's profits. That is what hurts so much about this trap. The income was large enough to create real wealth. The opportunity was there, the runway was there, but the money got intercepted by lifestyle before it could become ownership. That is not a math problem. That is an operating problem. Now let me make this brutal. A person with a huge income and a tiny savings rate is not one promotion away from freedom. He is one disruption away from exposure. The high income poverty trap survives because society flatters the wrong scoreboard. Society applauds visible consumption. It barely notices invisible ownership. A leased BMW gets attention. An index fund balance gets none. A large house gets attention. A paid-off life gets none. Private school gets attention. A seven-figure portfolio built slowly through discipline gets none. That is why so many people drift into the wrong game, the game of appearing finished instead of becoming durable. I have always preferred durable wins, durable sleeps, durable can say no, durable can walk away from bad deals, durable can survive recessions. Durable can help family without breaking. Durable can retire, durable can wait, durable is wealth. Everything else is theater. People love to talk about millionaires as if they must live like kings. Most real wealth builders do not. That is one of the most useful things you can learn. The people who actually accumulate money often look strangely ordinary. They drive practical vehicles. They live below the level their income could justify. They budget after they become successful, not before. They keep fixed costs lower than the culture says they should. They do not treat every raise like permission to upgrade every corner of life. Why? Because they understand something the trap do not. A high income is a terrible thing to waste on appearances. The doctor in Chicago is not struggling because she lacks money. She is struggling because her money reports to too many masters. That is the right way to think about this. Every recurring expense is a claim on your future labor. Every fixed cost is a hand reaching into next month before next month arrives. Every status payment is a quiet reduction in your future options. If you want to know whether you are caught in the trap, do not ask whether you feel rich. That is a useless question. Ask harder questions. How many months could I maintain my life if the income stopped today? How much of my spending is truly chosen and how much is locked in? How much of my lifestyle exists to serve me and how much exists to signal to other people? What percentage of my income goes straight into ownership before I touch anything else? If my child, spouse, or business needed cash quickly, would I be calm or cornered? Those are adult questions. Those questions destroy illusion. I want to say something that will sound severe, but it is true. Many high earners are not rich. They are employees with nicer wallpaper. They have simply built a more expensive dependency system around the same old problem. They still need the next check. They still fear interruption. They still serve the machine. That is not an insult. That is a diagnosis. And diagnoses are useful because once you name the disease, you can finally stop treating the symptoms and begin changing the structure. So let me tell you what the escape route looks like. Not a trick, not a hack, not a motivational speech, a structure, an operating system. First, you must kill the lie that income will save you later. Later is where all financial fantasies go to die. If your behavior does not change while income is high, more income usually just builds a more expensive trap. That is the first cut. Second, you must reverse the order of the cash flow. Most people spend first and save what is left. That guarantees a thin result because lifestyle expands greedily into whatever room you leave open. The wealthy do the opposite. They remove ownership money first automatically, without discussion, without monthly negotiation. They treat saving and investing as the first bill, not the leftover bill. That is not exciting. It is powerful. You do not build wealth by hoping discipline survives the month. You build wealth by making the decision once and automating it before temptation gets a vote. Third, you must attack fixed costs with brutality. Not emotion, not shame, precision, housing, cars, tuition, debt service, memberships, subscriptions, maintenance commitments. Anything recurring deserves suspicion because recurring costs are what turn a high income into a high-pressure life. I would much rather see a person making $250,000 live on $120,000 and invest the rest than see a person making $400,000 live on $370,000 and call himself successful. One of those people is building a fortress. The other is decorating a treadmill. Fourth, you must separate value from display. This is a grown-up exercise, and most people fail it because they do not want to discover how much of their spending is social camouflage. Do you love the thing itself, or do you love what it says about you? Do you value the school or the story the school tells? Do you value the car or the reaction to the car? Do you value the house or the identity attached to the house? There is no rule saying you must live cheaply, but if you cannot answer those questions honestly, your money is serving your ego instead of your freedom. That is an expensive arrangement. Fifth, you must build a real cushion, not symbolic savings, real liquidity, enough to take a hit, enough to absorb an interruption, enough to stop every surprise from becoming a negotiation with debt. Cushion is not just protection, it is power. It changes how you think, how you work, how you invest, how you negotiate, how you sleep. A person with margin sees opportunities a cornered person cannot see. A cornered person takes bad deals because he must. A buffered person can wait. That difference determines enormous parts of a life. 6, you must define enough before the culture defines it for you. This is one of the hardest acts in modern life because everything around you is built to move the target. You get to $500,000 and someone tells you comfort starts at $800,000. You get to $1 million and someone tells you wealth starts at $2 million. You get to $2 million and someone tells you real security starts at $5 million. That game has no finish line. You must create your own. Enough is not a number the culture hands you. Enough is the point where your life is funded, your values are protected, and your decisions are no longer ruled by image. If you do not define enough, you will spend your whole life chasing a moving target with excellent income and poor peace. Now I want to push this one step further because many people listening to me will nod along, feel briefly convicted, and then change nothing. That is useless insight without action is entertainment. The trap is not broken by agreement. It is broken by reallocation, by cancellation, by downsizing, by automating, by saying no, by letting some people think you are doing less well than you are because you are finally done paying to maintain an illusion. They were never going to fund for you anyway. That last point matters. A lot of people remain trapped because they cannot tolerate the social pain of appearing smaller. But you must decide who you want to impress. Strangers today or yourself 10 years from now, because the cost difference is enormous. The person who chooses strangers buys the car, the house, the memberships, the premium routine, the endless visible affirmations of success. The person who chooses his future self buys assets, margin, optionality, time, and the right to stop. One man accumulates applause, the other accumulates freedom. I know which one I prefer. Here is the identity flip most people need. Do not think of yourself as a high earner that is too small. Think of yourself as a capital allocator. The moment you do that, your whole life changes. A capital allocator does not ask, "Can I afford this?" He asks, "What future stream of freedom am I giving up to own this now?" A capital allocator does not get hypnotized by monthly payments. He looks at lifetime cost. A capital allocator does not celebrate a raise by raising all his obligations. He captures the spread. A capital allocator does not confuse revenue with retained earnings. He knows the business of his life can post huge sales and still go broke if costs rise to meet them. That is the right metaphor. Your household is a business. Revenue matters. Retention matters more. Most high-income households look marvelous on the revenue line and terrible on the retained earnings line. Beautiful top line, weak bottom line. That is exactly how flashy businesses fail. The same disease destroys households. I am not telling you to live like a monk. I am telling you to stop financing a costume so aggressively that you never get to own your own life. Keep what matters, cut what flatters, fund what compounds, starve what performs. That is the entire philosophy. And if you want it as a cleaner protocol, here it is. First, fix a non-negotiable ownership rate. Not what you hope to save, what you will save before life gets a chance to spend it. Second, cap your fixed costs before they become identity. Third, build liquidity until interruptions stop scaring you. Fourth, audit every recurring expense by asking one brutal question: does this buy utility, joy, or freedom in proportion to its cost? If the answer is no, it goes fifth. Measure progress by net worth and cash flow margin, not by visible lifestyle. Sixth, repeat for years, not weeks, not quarters, because the trap was built gradually and the escape is built the same way. There is no magic, there is only structure. The high-income poverty trap is dangerous because it wastes the most valuable years of a strong earning life. It tells capable people they are safe while they are still one interruption away from stress. It lets them postpone discipline because the income is large enough to hide the leak for a while. But eventually the leak matters. Eventually the compounding gap matters. Eventually the years matter. And eventually the person wakes up older, richer on paper, poorer in freedom, and wonders how such a large income created so little peace. That is the wrong ending. I do not want that ending for you. So I will leave you with a knife, not a pillow. If your income vanished tomorrow, would your life reveal wealth or merely spending power? That is the test. Not your car, not your title, not your neighborhood, not your dinner reservations, not your salary, your retained strength. Your margin, your ownership, your ability to absorb shock and still stand there calmly, that is wealth. Everything else is rented confidence, and rented confidence is always more expensive than people think.